Thank you. Well, hello everyone. Hi from sunny Malta. So, I'm Jessica Walker and I'm from Sigma Group, and I'm delighted to introduce to you the special live streaming event brought to you by AIG and Sigma. And today we'll be discussing what Asia's land-based casinos can learn from Europe's iGaming boom. So, it's great to see some familiar faces here and also some new faces. So, we're going to have a little breakdown, first of all, of what's in store for everyone for today. So, first, we'll start with moving over to Ben, managing editor at IAG, who has some interactive polls for you all to get involved in as well. And ahead of our Sigma Asia Digital Conference on the 8th, 9th, and 10th of June, Sigma Group's founder, Eman Pulis, and Andrew Scott, CEO of IAG, will be discussing what Asia can learn from the European iGaming experience and also how the industry looks post COVID-19. So they're going to have a 20-minute discussion. After that, we're going to move over to a 20-minute AMA where you can actually get involved and ask them both some questions as well. And throughout the chat, I will be pasting a link to our Sigma Focus Asia Digital Summit. So if you haven't yet registered, it's on the 8th, 9th, and 10th of June. I'll pop the link in the chat throughout the conversation. Be sure to register to join in. And I'm going to hand it over to Ben now. Ben, it's over to you.
Thanks, Jessica. Tough act to follow. It's great to see we've got around 60 people already joined today, which is great to see. So just for anybody that doesn't know who I am, I'm Ben Blaschke. I'm the managing editor of Inside Asian Gaming, and we're super excited about this event today. It's our first joint presentation on our game platform, so really looking forward to working with Sigma on this one. Before we get started today, we're just going to start with a quick poll that we'd like everybody to do. So Victoria, if you'd like to put the first poll up for everybody to do. Just a little poll on where are you located. Just going to find out where people are watching from today. It takes a minute to put that in and we'll see the results momentarily. Okay, Victoria, do you want to check the results up? Right, so we've got people, well, obviously quite a few from Asia Pacific, but around 20% of our audience so far from Europe as well, which is great to see. So, look, as Jessica said, we're today's event between IAG and Sigma. We'll see Andrew and Eman talking about what Asia's land-based casinos can learn from Europe's iGaming boom. If you've got any questions, we're going to run an AMA session for the second 20 minutes. So any questions you've got, you'd like to ask either Eman or Andrew, please send questions directly to me, Ben Blaschke, in the chat box. Just a little note, of course, as I mentioned earlier, this event is being facilitated through IAG's new game online solutions platform, and we'd love you to join. We hold regular events. In fact, we've got one coming up very shortly as well. You can join at IAGGame, IAGGAME.com. And of course, don't forget to sign up to Sigma's Focus Asia Virtual Summit coming up in a couple of weeks too. You can register there at sigma.com.mt. Now, just before we get started, we're going to run one more little poll. I just want to find out what sector of the gaming industry our audience is associated with. So, Victoria, if you can chuck up the second poll, great. Are you iGaming? Are you land-based, or both? Give everybody a few moments to enter their answers to the poll. And then when you're ready, Victoria, put those results up for us to have a bit of a look at. There you go. So quite a land-based mix at the moment. Plenty from both, representing both segments as well. So that's great to see. So a good mix there as well. So it's the great thing about this joint event is we've got people joining us from all areas of the industry. So look, no more from me. I think it's time to hand over to Andrew and to Eman and to get started with the main event. So without further ado, over to you, Andrew.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Can everyone hear me? I guess they can, yes?
Yep.
Nodding? Yep, okay, great. All right, good. Well, in the spirit of post-COVID-19, I'm also working from home. It was a bit noisy in the office today, so I decided to come here. So hence the more domestic background than the more corporate one. And just before we kick off fully, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the passing away of Dr. Stanley Ho today, about 4 hours ago in hospital in Hong Kong. He's obviously an absolute giant in our industry, perhaps the absolute giant of our industry. We wouldn't have the junket system we have today. We wouldn't have the Macau we have today without him. And although it's been expected for a very long time, it's nevertheless still very sad when it does. And his influence on the industry lasted 60 years, which is quite quite amazing. So I think just needed to acknowledge that. And if you go to our website, asgam.com, you'll see the site's dark at the moment. We've got quite a nice obituary to Dr. Ho up there at the moment. So, all right, well, let's get into what we're talking about. So the iGaming industry and what the iGaming industry in Europe could perhaps inform us in the land-based. I see there from the polls that there's a majority of people here who are Asian land-based people looking to learn more about the iGaming industry in Europe. So, Eman, tell us could you just give us maybe in a few minutes, like a short history of how the iGaming evolved in Europe over the last 20, 25 years? What kicked it off?
By all means.
So forth. Yeah.
By all means. First of all, it's a pleasure to be doing this co-host, Andrew. And I believe there will be more to come, at least for as long as this pandemic decides to keep us company. But back to the original theme, and I don't mean to throw anyone under the bus, but this was an error that I have done when I decided to pack from Europe and go live in Asia, because I wanted to launch Sigma in Asia. I felt back then, and wrongly so, I felt that Europe has a lot to teach to Asia, when that philosophy was wrong in the first place. I believe strongly that there's so much we can learn from each other, so much knowledge that can cross-pollinate both regions. So I don't think it's just a matter of Europe showing Asia how the online industry is flourishing, but it's a matter of both, first of all, understanding each other's sector, learning from each other, and then do business with each other. So this was a small lesson which I learned very, very fast in the beginning. And I'm still learning a lot from the Asian market on what works and what doesn't. So my number one advice to any European folks planning to expand into Asia is to go there with an open mind, go there to learn, and then talk business. So this is the first, I would say, sacrosanct rule that Europeans need to embrace if they wish to do business in Asia. But how did it all start? Malta was one of the first regulators to embrace online gambling. And because of a number of features, a lot of companies based in Germany, based in the UK, based in Sweden and Norway and all Scandinavian countries, they wanted to operate their business in a safe environment. They didn't want the government to tell them, hey, what you're doing is illegal, you need to stop. So most of these companies moved to Malta, they set up shop there, they recruited hundreds of people, and they operated safely with a Malta Gaming Authority license. And that's how online gaming in Europe took off. There's other regulators, there's JIP, there's Isle of Man, but one can safely say that Malta has become the hub for online gaming in Europe. Fast forward a few years, and as of lately, now you have national jurisdictions, including the United Kingdom, including Germany, including Sweden, including other states, picking up slowly. They started regulating their own space. So 10 years ago, a license in Malta gave you access to all those different jurisdictions. But with the passing of time, those jurisdictions are realizing they should regulate themselves, their own territory. So if an operator wants to target UK, they need a UK GC license. If they want to target Sweden, they need the Swedish regulator to grant them a license. If they want to open in Germany, they also need a license. So the Malta license is becoming less and less influential from that point of view. So this is a brief history on how gaming emerged in Europe.
And what year did it start? What year was the beginning of, what would you call the beginning of the iGaming industry in Europe? And were there phases? Are there distinct phases where maybe something happened in a certain year that changed everything and moved into I mean, I know if I explain the land-based industry in Asia, I would say, well, this happened, and then they liberalised in Macau, so it happened and so forth.
I would say, I would say a landmark year was 2004, when the government of Malta, and I'm saying both sides, this is very important. It's not only important to have a license as a government, but it's important that both members in government and members in opposition are towing the same line. And why am I saying this? Companies who want to invest, set up shop, employ hundreds of people, they want the peace of mind that with any change in government, so whoever is going to be in government, for their business is going to be business as usual. And I'll give you another example. Malta has regulated in 2004, and both political parties, the main two political parties, said we embrace this, and whoever is in government is going to support the online gambling industry. So companies came to Malta, they had peace of mind. It's also a member of the European Union. So it added a lot of securities to these companies that there's not going to be a change in gust in wind, a sudden change in wind. What's the situation in the Philippines, for example? Yes, it is one of the only regulators to regulate POGO licenses, the online gambling industry. However, and I say this humbly, you often find senators sitting on maybe opposing sides who are critical of POGO licenses in the Philippines. And that doesn't send the message that operators can have peace of mind in the long term. You know, operators do feel concerned about their operation, about their business, should there be any change in government. So I think this is a very important point, that both government and opposition should be towing the same line, at least when it comes to gaming.
So I might return to that when we talk a little bit more about Asia, but I just want to hit a bit more on Europe. So you mentioned Gibraltar and you also mentioned Isle of Man. So these three are kind of the main three jurisdictions in Asia that regulate, are they?
In Europe, yeah.
Yeah. Did I say Asia? I meant Europe. So
in Europe.
What are the differences between those? I mean, those three, for example, is there one that's particularly stronger than the other, or?
No, look, they all have their own points. Honestly speaking, the one in Malta has been revamped as of recently, and I can tell you it has become technology neutral. So one stumbling block with regulation is that technology is moving at such a rapid pace. You know, today you have blockchain technology coming into gaming, you have artificial intelligence, you have new systems of software coming into the sphere. So how do you keep ahead with regulation? And what the Malta Gaming Authority did is regulate in such a way that it is technology neutral. So it allows technology to flourish, but the regulation essentially remains the same without the need to change or to adapt to it. And that was a very important milestone which happened a couple of years ago. Also, it has been simplified. There were 4 different licenses, whereas now they have been simplified into 2. You have a B2B license and a B2C license. Then the way they differ from each other, I would say predominantly, is in the KYC vertical. So I know the Malta Gaming Authority is very stringent on KYC, even for company directors who want to set up shop and get the Malta license. Whereas the appetite for KYC across other licensors maybe is not as robust as the one in Malta. So, you know, different risk appetites across 3 licensors.
And obviously this talk is about online and offline getting together. So the offline gaming industry, the land-based gaming businesses in Europe that's one of the big differences between Asia and Europe. In Europe, they tend to be smaller, club-like, whereas in Asia, obviously we've got Macau is massive. We've got big integrated resorts in the Philippines, 2 in Singapore.
Exactly.
But nevertheless, putting that difference aside, how much do in Europe the land-based and the online industries cooperate, work together, talk to each other? I mean, do they partner up to offer an online experience for a land-based brand and things like that? Do they do that? Are there examples you can give?
Yeah, there are examples of live dealers who have presence in actual real casinos. Authentic Gaming comes to mind, for example. They don't operate in a studio, they operate in an actual casino. So you have land-based clients who can replicate that experience back home on a laptop by playing with a live dealer. So you have instances like this. You have also instances of omni-channel, where a player can open an account with a land-based casino and can use that same account to play back home and finish or start a new fresh game, for example. So you have instances like these, yes. But
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but I think COVID-19, there's a great silver lining in there. And it is giving an opportunity to the land-based industry to understand and realize that the online is not there to eat their lunch, but it's actually there to complement what they're offering. So I'm seeing a lot of new discussions emerging on how the online technology can help land-based industry adapt to this pandemic.
I guess in Asia, I mean, we've kind of got the situation where Sheldon Adelson comes out and says, "Oh, iGaming, it's awful, it's the worst thing in the world," and yet he's running a gaming operation. Obviously, there's an issue there about cannibalization. He's worried about that. And here in Asia, there's historically been even animosity between those two universes of land-based and iGaming, because they see exactly that. They see, well, iGaming is going to come along and take all my money. But like, what's of interest to me is what's happened in New Jersey, where they've brought the legislation in and iGaming companies have partnered with casinos to create an offering within that environment. I mean, I guess you could start, the thin end of the wedge could be even something as simple as, okay, you're in a casino in Macau or Philippines or Singapore or whatever, and now you want to keep playing, but you don't want to be there. You want to go up to your room. Well, why can't you go up to your room and log on and play on that exact same table that you were? I mean, why is that the end of the world that you can't? And then that could sort of evolve.
Yeah,
right?
that's for example, one discussion that land-based casinos are entertaining now. So we're not talking about internet, but even talking about intranet here. So you have machines that have to be switched off because of social distancing at the moment. But what is the opportunity of having actually those machines that are switched off tuned into a tablet, so players who do not have access to a physical machine but are in the hotel can still play remotely on those machines? So there's a lot of debates and discussions going in this direction to support the land-based industry.
And I know if I've walked into casinos in London and seen roulette being live dealt with cameras, and that's obviously streaming somewhere, right? So how is that dealt with in a regulatory way when you've got a regulator regulating the land-based property that you're in, but then you also have a regulator regulating the iGaming company, and that might be a different regulator, mightn't it, in a different country? How do those two regulators talk to each? I mean, am I understanding that right, or how does that work?
Well, there's obviously the law of the land. So you can't have a regulator from overseas regulating a physical roulette table unless the hosting country allows that to happen. No, so there are rules at play which prevent an online operation from happening unless it's allowed in that country. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, might it be, so does it mean that that iGaming company that's working with that land-based company in Europe has to be licensed in that country? But that doesn't seem to make sense to me, because aren't they all pretty much licensed in either Gibraltar, Malta, or Isle of Man? I mean, excuse my ignorance, but that's what we're doing today, right? I'm trying to understand what how.
No, you have other licensors. I mean, you have various states across the US now which are regulating the online gaming space, particularly sports betting. Then in Asia, you have PACCOR, who is also regulating that space. So no, you have, besides the three regulators in Europe and the other national jurisdictions like UKGC, the Swedish regulator, the German regulator. So you have a number of regulators who are embracing online gaming.
Mm-hmm. I guess maybe we should talk a little bit about, we've only got another 5 minutes or so on us before we throw it open to questions. I guess we should talk a little bit about Asia as well. Like, obviously, for those Europeans who are here, there are more Asians that are here than Europeans or Asian-based people. In Asia, we effectively really only have the Philippines as a regulator for their POGO regime, the Philippines offline gaming operator, offshore gaming operators. And they geo-block the Philippines, right? So their rules are, well, yes, you can get a license here. Yes, you pay your fees. Yes, you pay your taxes. Although we did run a story the other day saying every single operator is behind on their taxes. That allows you now to offer online gaming to anywhere in the world, as long as it's not the Philippines. But of course, you've got the other side of it where you've got China. Many of these are Chinese facing, and you've got China saying, well, iGaming's the worst thing in the world and we don't want to have that. So you've got this sort of tension between the Philippines and China. Of course, just to China. I mean, you've been based in the Philippines for a little while now, Eman. What do you feel about that as somebody that knows about iGaming? Like, it feels to me like, yes, we have iGaming, but it's still somewhat problematic, right?
And I would agree with that assessment, which is where we felt that we can probably with our summit coming in June in a couple of weeks, and then in May next year, we could contribute for both sides to learn from this experience from each other. Europe was very much an unregulated space in the past as well. But with the passing of time, governments realized that it's not a question of whether to regulate or not regulate, because people are still going to play. Now, whether you want them to play in a regulated market or in the black market, that is the question. So a lot of governments realize that by not regulating, they're simply hemorrhaging tax money that belongs to the people. And with that philosophy, a lot of states are embracing regulation. I believe it's honestly a matter of time for regulators across Asia to understand that online gaming is here to stay. It's very difficult to control the black market. So why not protect the consumer? Why not regulate the space and make sure that whoever is playing online is playing in a well-regulated environment? So I think this is the direction which Asia will end up embracing as years go by.
I think probably pretty much everybody in this meeting would probably agree with that, being the industry that we're from. I mean, obviously, prohibition never works, no matter what it is, what social vice it might happen to be, it never works. But that argument so far hasn't worked in Asia. And in fact, if anything, things have gone backwards, because you had Cambodia, where we did have iGaming licenses attached to land-based, and then that's now gone by, officially now gone by the wayside with pressure from the mainland.
But that's...
So what happened in Europe? What was the catalyst in Europe to get Germany and France and Italy and Sweden to go, you know what, okay, we buy this, let's get involved? What made that happen?
Yeah, I think a lot of operators were obsessed about targeting China. And I think Asia is so much more than China. So I see a trend now for operators who are actually making sure they do not touch China, because the regulation is clear. Chinese government doesn't want operators to target Chinese players. But there, across the entire Asian region, there's potential. States are less aggressive against online gambling and against regulating the space. And I think if the operators, suppliers, and the whole industry embraces that, I think we have bright years to look ahead into. Let's keep in mind, we're talking about a population of 4.5 billion people. Europe, we're talking a bit over 600, 700 million people. And look at how lucrative the market in Europe has been by regulating. So yes, I would say, let's stop looking into China exclusively. This is also what we're doing as an events company. We want to come set up this event in Manila, but we do not want to focus on China because clearly that is not the only way to go. But we want to bring with us entrepreneurs from Sweden, from Germany, from UK, from North America, from South America. And we want the Philippines to become truly an online gaming hub for the world region. So not just Chinese operators targeting China, but we want it to become more international. And I think there's a business opportunity there.
You know, I certainly agree with you about Southeast Asia in particular. People often forget in Asia they obsess about China and forget about there's nearly 1 billion people in Southeast Asia with a very healthy middle class in countries like, you know, Vietnam and Singapore, Malaysia and Indonesia and so forth. So that's an often sort of forgotten market. We could keep on talking for ages, but I'm conscious of keeping on time. Ben, I think we're at about the halfway, are we?
We certainly are, as I unmute myself. Yeah, we're about the halfway point now, so I think we should very shortly start the Ask Me Anything session. In fact, we've got a few questions already coming in, which is great. Just before we do, though, we do love our polls, so let's just let's run another poll. And quite a relevant question, actually. Victoria, if you could run the third poll. We're just looking at if there was one central location for iGaming to be regulated in Asia, what would be the ideal location? What would be the best jurisdiction for that to happen? Everybody a minute to have a look.
Better give people a few seconds for that one.
Yeah, quite a few options.
Yeah. There's a few good contenders there.
All right, I got one.
So we'll give people a few seconds to answer. We'll have a look at what people think. Victoria, you want to throw up the results there? Let's have a look. Here we go, Macau. Macau in the lead and Singapore.
And Singapore. That's an interesting one.
Interesting. What are your thoughts on that, Eman?
Well, look, the three jurisdictions on top, they would all make excellent homes for online gaming. I think it depends. It depends if you're looking for world community to relocate and be based somewhere. Singapore might have a number of benefits. Macau has also a number of benefits if you want to combine the expertise of land-based to cross-pollinate with online. And if you want to have an open line of communication also with the Chinese government, probably that could also help to have Macau. Philippines, let's not forget the Philippines has been regulating or talking about the space even before Malta has. So in the late 1990s, you had a committee within CESA who had already started talking about regulating online gaming. So the Philippines is also a third great contender because they have been debating the space for a long time. We're talking about a population who speaks extremely fluent English, so it can become an international hub for gaming. And let's not forget, there's a lot of gaming companies already based in the Philippines. So the foundations are there already. So those three contenders, I wholeheartedly agree with the audience.
I'll just throw something
that
in.
They should be the top three.
I'll throw something in very quickly. Philippines already started. Macau communicate with China and already has great place to fund your accounts for the casinos. I've always thought Taiwan would be good because quite frankly, they don't really care about China, right? They don't get on with China. So that's probably, and they're smart. They've already got a good technological background there. And there's quite a bit of wealth in Taiwan. I've always thought Taiwan would be a good, if you were to start from scratch and have to pick a country, maybe, or pick a jurisdiction, I should say, maybe Taiwan. Anyway, leave it to the next question.
Yeah, so we've got a few questions coming in, and quite a few of them actually relate to Macau, so that's pretty topical. So the first one is, if there's a European company looking to get into the Asian market and get to know the Asian market, would Macau be a good entry point, not only because of the Macau's gaming background, but also because there's obviously a Portuguese cultural heritage in Macau? Perhaps that might be an easier way to slip in and just get to know the Asian market. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, is it for land-based or for online gaming?
Doesn't specify in the question. Well, I think online gaming, but obviously that's not possible at the moment in Macau, but maybe just generally to get to know the Asian market.
Well, I would say if you're interested in online gaming, I wouldn't necessarily go for Macau. But certainly if it's land-based gaming, you know, Macau is the undisputed heavyweight, I would say worldwide, not only in Asia. Actually, touching on land-based, what would be extremely interesting one day to explore, look at the world map. You have a land-based Mecca in Asia, which is Macau. You have a land-based Mecca in Vegas, in the US, and there's hardly anything in between. And in the future, I would potentially see a land-based Mecca in Dubai. Now, there's obviously a lot of obstacles one has to face before even entertaining that discussion. However, I see a vacuum there in the Middle East. But religion permitting also, I think Dubai would lend itself greatly for a land-based Mecca for gaming.
All those Middle Eastern guys, they love going to London and playing roulette. Just about for whoever asked that question, if you're a supplier looking to supply the land-based industry, definitely Macau. If you're an iGaming company, definitely the Philippines. There's quite a bit of antipathy in Macau towards iGaming. It's actually negative. I should also mention this. We actually have legislation in Macau for iGaming. It does exist. It's called interactive gaming. It was passed in 2003, I think. And it does exist. There was contemplated to have an iGaming industry in Macau. And just before the 2004 World Cup, which I think was that the one in South Africa? No, it was earlier than that. Anyway, they passed this legislation, but what ended up happening, in very Macau style, was one company got a monopoly. So there's a company here called Macau Slot that has a monopoly on slot. It's confusing. It sounds like slot machines. It's not. It's sports lottery of something or other or something like that. Basically, they're only allowed to bet on sport, and they're only allowed to bet on two sports, football and basketball. But they do have an online gaming, so it does exist. They just had their license extended for 5 years a few years ago. I can't remember exactly. You can Google it and find it. But there is theoretically potential for it here in Macau. But I mean, the nearest thing we've got to any kind of proper iGaming industry is in the Philippines for what it's worth. For it, you know, for good or for ill, is what we've currently. Philippines.
You know, another discussion latched to this question, which one could entertain, is whether the Macau government would entertain the reopening of this discussion, of embracing online gaming. COVID-19 has certainly renewed the call to diversify the economy, the portfolio of the economy of Macau. And is there a place for blockchain technology? Is there a place for online gaming? So these perhaps are questions one may reignite in the nearby future.
Well, it's actually, sorry, Andrew, this leads me into the next question. I know what you're going to say, and this will actually lead into what you're about to say. Of course, Macau did have proxy betting as well, which is in this realm in some way, which was made illegal in 2016, I think it was. So we've got a question, which is, I mean, given the challenges that the industry faces regarding things like phone betting, proxy betting, which is currently illegal in Macau but has existed in the past, do you think the actual KYC and AML regulations used worldwide in iGaming would be possible to implement in Macau?
I think it would, because people come to Macau anyway. So it may be that to set up an account, you need to physically come into Macau, into a property first, and there are jurisdictions that have that. And pretty much any gambler goes to Macau anyway. If you go anywhere in North America around the gambling world, people have been to Las Vegas. Well, the same thing in Asia for Macau, right? So yeah, I think it could be. And given the history with proxy betting, just for people who don't know, proxy betting is essentially somebody puts a bet on for you and you're at the other end of a telephone line or even an internet connection or whatever. It's not considered to be iGaming, but it is quite a common thing in Asia. But as Ben says, outlawed in 2016 in Macau, and Sun City, the biggest junket in Asia, last year made a decision to follow the Macau law everywhere, including in the Philippines. And City of Dreams Manila decided to stop proxy betting. So there's a little bit of negativity towards proxy betting around Asia, but it still does occur in some places. And that could be a kind of a introduction. At least there's a history of it in Asia, right? There's a history of it in Macau. It's not totally new to us here in Asia. So it could be a beginning, and it may well be, as the questioner asked, KYC and AML. Well, if you'd already come to Macau, you'd already set up facilities here in Macau, that could be the way to do it.
Yeah, I would also say so much great technology is coming out of Asia. I would say there's currently a new Cold War brewing between the West and Asia, and this is on artificial intelligence this time. So not a single bullet is fired. However, you have two world powerhouses who are battling it on the AI front. Who is going to be the world leader in artificial intelligence? So definitely you have China, who is coming up with great technology. To me, they're also winning this war. And why not use some of that technology and blockchain technology for KYC and for AML? Sky is the limit.
And the home of that is in Shenzhen, which is spitting distance from Macau in that Greater Bay Area. So, and I agree with you. It's a China-US war. If you look at all the big tech companies around the world, they're either US or China. Like all that stuff in Japan is just robots that dance and stuff like that. Forget that. It's really just China and the US, it's the big tech companies in the world, and they're fighting. Well, I agree with you. I think China's winning at the moment. But anyway, we're always short of time in these things. So Ben, better get another question out of you, I guess.
Well, speaking of Japan, Andrew, good timing. I actually got a question here. It is more for you, I think, Andrew. It's, given the slow pace of Japan's IR developments, and obviously we've seen Las Vegas Sands pull out of the race very recently, does a land-based IR industry still make sense for Japan?
100%. Absolutely it does. We could have another whole game on this, and in fact we will. But just to give it a 2-minute or 1-minute answer even, when Japan opens its land-based industry, it will be the second biggest land-based gaming industry in the world, without a doubt, after Macau. Whether it's 20 billion or 15 billion or 10 billion or 25 billion, we don't know. Depends upon the rules, but it absolutely will be. There's a lot of reasons, which we don't have time now in this event to go into why. It will be, but I mean, look at the population, look at the disposable income, look at the age bracket, look at pachinko. I mean, I think there's absolutely no doubt. It makes a hell of a lot of sense. Now, the Japanese government aren't doing themselves any favors right now. When I say the Japanese government, I actually mean probably the national government. And the point that Eman made before about having an opposition that is pro was a really good and interesting point I hadn't thought of. So thanks for bringing that up. And we don't have that in Japan. So we've got Abe, who's very pro and has been pro for a long time, but you always hear these on thin ice. The guy's been on thin ice for 20 years. So even the opposition comes in, will it all be scuttled? Who knows? But the question was, does it make sense? Yes, it makes sense.
I've actually got a question for Eman myself for something you said earlier about, we were talking about how there's a bit of a partnership in a lot of European casinos. You walk in and you see, an iGaming set up over on the right. I think you mentioned Authentic Gaming do quite a bit of that. And I'm just wondering if that sort of model of how land-based and online can operate together in some way. Do you think that sort of model is the sort of thing you might see in Asia that would work?
Well, look, this is not the only model that that this is not the only form of cooperation between land-based and online. I believe sky is the limit on what level of cooperation the two can have. But yes, certainly, I do not exclude having a section within an integrated resort that is also catering for hundreds and thousands of players remotely. I see also an opportunity for VR, for augmented reality, to also kick in here. If a player wants, for example, the whole experience of walking into an integrated resort and then sitting on an actual table and changing table, this is all part of the luck experience that a player wants to live when they go into a casino. You try a table, it doesn't work. You want to go twice clockwise and go on another table. Currently, you don't have that in a virtual experience. So what if we take the online experience to another level and we have augmented reality, we have virtual reality, where the player is sent a pair of binoculars, branded, whatever, and give him the opportunity to actually walk into this integrated resort, pick his own table where he wants to play, and enhance the overall experience. We haven't even touched the surface on how the two, land-based and online, can live together. And I think there's so much they can do to support each other.
You could maybe squeeze the cards too in Baccarat online.
Why not? Why not?
We've probably got a few more minutes left. I've actually got an excellent question here from Tom. Looking at the situation we mentioned before in the Philippines, where, as we spoke of, there is opposition. The government's obviously allowing the pogo industry to happen at the moment, but the opposition parties have been quite vocally opposed. But as Tom mentions, quite a bit of the opposition is traditional moral dislike to gambling in general. So it doesn't really pay a lot of attention to the economic benefits and the tax opportunities. So the question here is there a European example of a similar situation where they were able to move past that? That maybe the Philippines can look at this European country and make sense out of how they managed to move forward? Malta,
but one has to understand there's differences. Malta is a very small state. So having 300, 400, 500 companies relocate to Malta, create 15,000 jobs, that's a no-brainer. That is definitely going to help the economy big time. And because of that, online gaming is responsible for about 12% of the entire country's GDP. You have a small parliament in Malta, so politicians do manage to sit around the table and agree to slaughter each other on any vertical, but to toe the same line when it comes to financial services, when it comes to online gaming, when it comes to regulating blockchain technology. So being a small state helps. The Philippines is not a small state like Malta, and finding this sort of agreement might be a little bit more challenging, but I believe never impossible.
Yeah, I'll just add something to that as well. I think a lot of it's anti-China sentiments as well being in the Philippines. And everyone's to blame here. There's you look at even up to 400, 500,000 Chinese in iGaming. I know the official figures are 40,000 or 120,000 or any number in between, depending upon who you listen to. But you also hear people unofficially saying it's 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 mainland Chinese coming into the Philippines. And that's a culture clash when you've got areas that are completely Chinese with Chinese signs and Chinese restaurants. And you think about if you're a nationalistic country, which the Philippines is, and all of a sudden another country, a whole bunch of their people come in and kind of change the nature of a town or a city or whatever, and also perhaps behave not so well because, and I'm say that bluntly, like the Chinese, but then again, it's not their fault either because their economy has gone up so quickly over such a short period of time in not even a generation, maybe one generation or less than a generation. You've got a lot of people who perhaps didn't have the education that have now got a lot of money, and you put those two things together, you usually get bad behavior. And then you're doing that in another country that's nationalistic, you get this backlash. So that's what we're seeing in the Philippines at the moment, a lot of that.
Yeah, very true.
Okay, well, I might wrap it up there, and I might throw over to Jessica to just wrap this up for us. And no, thanks Andrew and Eman, and over to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Ben. Well, Emma and Angela, that was a really great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing some of your insights. I think I can speak for a lot of our viewers that we found it really informative to look at how things are going across Asia and also this merger that we are seeing between land-based and online. So thanks very much. Now, I hope everyone enjoyed listening and I hope they learned something as well. When it comes to looking ahead now, obviously I would like to direct all of our viewers to our Sigma Asia digital conference, which will be the 8th, 9th and 10th of June. We'll be having a lot of discussions focused around this as well, and the merger between land-based and online, and also focusing on the deep tech side of the gaming industry, which is something which is our focus at the moment to the Sigma group. As well, Game 3 will be hosted by the IAG group next Tuesday, the same time. So any other information, just let us know. But we hope you enjoyed everything. And Andrew, the rest of the IAG team, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. See you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks.